John Cauchi is a community education specialist at Disability Advocates of Kent County, where he delves into issues of DEI related to disability. After graduating from Western Michigan University with a degree in health service and disability studies, he's worked specifically in the disability community. Previously, he spent 5 years working with Kent County students with disabilities as they prepared to transition into adulthood. Disability is a key factor in not only his professional life, but his personal life, as John lost most of his vision due to a rare disorder known as Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy at age 12. John has experienced life with a unique perspective and shares his personal testimony when educating others. In his free time, which is limited, he just became a father, and John can be found performing stand-up comedy around the Grand Rapids area, where he emphasizes the real and funny side to life with a disability. John is also a youth camp director for the Michigan Blind and Athletic Association's sports education camp. Patrick Knowles oversees all things Absolutely Accessible Kent as the project's unofficial point. Patrick Parks, so excuse me, Patrick, as the unofficial project point person and the official business development coordinator. As a wheelchair user born with cerebral palsy, Patrick brings lived experience to this role that was brand new to Disability Advocates of Kent County as of June 1, 2020. He supplements this lived experience with professional experiences in the business, public policy, and education sectors. Patrick holds a master's in business administration, as well as a BA and an MA in political science and political leadership, all from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Outside of work, Patrick enjoys competing both nationally and internationally as a member of the U.S. national team in the Paralympic sport of bocce. Relatedly, he serves as the vice president and athletic representative on the USA Bocce Board of Directors, as well as athletic representative to the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee Athletic Advisory Council. I'm excited and grateful to have two such knowledgeable as well as important contributors to the DEI accessibility space with us this morning. And I'm gonna toss it over to you, Patrick and John. Take it away. Welcome to the Diversity and Talent webinar series.
Thank you, Andre. Just give me 1 second as I get our PowerPoint up and running. It should be good. Everybody can see that fine. Awesome. So again, I'm John and joined with Patrick. And thank you for the introduction, Andre. Just to go over our outline of what we are going to be covering today. First, we're going to be talking about the history of Centers for Independent Living. That is the umbrella organization that Disability Advocates is a part of. We're going to talk about the specific services that we offer at our organization. We are going to take some time to define disability. We are going to look at the impact of disability in commerce. We're going to talk a little bit about how our organization can help all of your businesses and organizations, as well as how your businesses and organizations can help an agency such as our own. And then finally, we're going to spend some time for Q&A.
All right. Yep. So jumping in here, as Andre said, I'm Patrick. Thank you guys for having us. Thank you to the Chamber and all the amazing sponsors for helping us to put this on. I think it was about a year ago today almost that we had this discussion of let's do something next year. And so to be here this morning, great feeling being with all of you. So to dive in here, a little bit about who we are and why we exist as Disability Advocates of Kent County. So we are what's called a Center for Independent Living. And there are a couple of important key adjectives there. We're community-based, which means we're rooted in the community that we serve. We're cross-disability. So we serve across the disability spectrum. There's really no limit to the disabilities that we serve. As our executive director likes to say, you know, with some corny jokes at times, if disability is in the name, you know, we hope that you would call us, right? So cross disability. And then I think the most important piece here, as we talk about representation, as we talk about, you know, being engaged in the accessibility and disability space, we are designed and operated by people with disabilities themselves. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in terms of the history, because Centers for Independent Living were really one of the crown jewels of the disability rights movement. The gentleman on the slide there is a gentleman by the name of Ed Roberts. He's from Berkeley, California, which is sort of the birthplace of the disability rights movement at University of California, Berkeley, along with a lot of the other civil rights movements that were going on at the time. Ed Roberts is somebody, as you can see there via his picture, you may be able to tell, he had polio, and one of the biggest things it affected was his breathing, right? So he actually spent most of his time in an iron lung, most of his day, and spent, you know, various periods, obviously, you know, out of the iron lung in his wheelchair. But one of the reasons I bring that up, why that's so important, is that most of his school career, he was actually sending in his work via correspondence. And then he finally said, you know, what's wrong with this picture? I should be able to go to school just like everybody else. And he found his place in really the birthplace of the disability rights movement and the work that he was able to continue to do at the University of California, Berkeley. And so from that, there are 403 federally and state funded Centers for Independent Living nationwide. And we here in Michigan are one of 15. So there are, every corner of the state is covered by a Center for Independent Living. In terms
And I would just mention, with that 403 Centers for Independent Living, every county in the US is covered by a Center for Independent Living.
Right. And so if I know we don't have time today, if disability history, if you want to learn more kind of about the genesis of all of this, I would recommend checking out a Netflix documentary called Crip Camp. It really dives into the role of some of those seminal advocates around, you know, why they felt the need to start organizations like ours. So check out Crip Camp. Also look into a biography called Being Human, Heumann, by Judy Heumann, spelled the same way.
Yep. And Judy is known as the mother of the independent living movement, where Ed Roberts is known as the father of the independent living movement. So our specific organization, Disability Advocates of Kent County, may be a little misleading. We do say of Kent County, but we also serve Ionia, Montcalm, Macasta, and Osceola County. I always joke that we just clearly have a favorite county. Us as an organization, we were founded in 1981. So I think tomorrow at our Invest in Ability dinner, we will be celebrating our 41st birthday as a nonprofit organization serving this community. One of the big aspects of a Center for Independent Living is that we are federally mandated to have at least 51% of our staff and our board as individuals with disabilities. And pulling up our recent DEIA report, we exceed that number. So we really, again, try to be who we serve. Our mission at Disability Advocates is we work alongside people with disabilities as they seek to lead self-directed lives and to advocate for accessible and welcoming communities. Now, the big key to this, and I know we've gone through, like any organization, numerous mission statements trying to get it right, is that we walk alongside individuals. We really try to help support individuals to where they're able to achieve those goals, and we are there as a support system. We may provide some guidance, but we're never dragging people along. We're never pushing them to do things that make them uncomfortable. We are simply walking alongside individuals as they make the changes that they want to see happen. So at Disability Advocates of Kent County, we have well over 30 programs that we offer as an organization, but all those programs can fall under one of three areas. And those areas are simply access to home, community, and employment.
So I will dive in here in terms of access to home and go through a little bit, touch on a bit of each of these topics. So with our adaptive home solutions, we have a wonderful occupational therapy team that actually goes into, it could be a, more of a micro level issue or sort of a macro level issue in terms of, I may need a transfer bench to be able to better get into a tub to stay in my home, or I may need to do a complete renovation, right? And so we have a wonderful team of occupational therapists that will actually work, again, alongside people, do a home evaluation, figure out what they need and how we can help. As part of that work, the OT team has put together a great set of what they call 0-step guidelines. So as the name kind of implies, barrier-free or 0-step, right? If you're someone who needs a barrier-free or 0-step home, these guidelines will help you to start that process, because it can be a complex process knowing what to look for and how to design a home of that nature. But then also these guidelines can be helpful in terms of renovations to give you ideas as well, because we know that needs change. Disability, as we'll talk about in a few slides, is on a spectrum, right? And so the goal of this team really in that first bullet there is to what we call aging in place, to allow folks to stay in their homes for as long as they can, right? And we have, before I guess I move on from this bullet point, I'd like to actually invite all of you out to our new space at Disability Advocates. We are, if some of you know where the old South Christian High School is, we are in that space along with Special Olympics and many other tenants that serve the disability community. And the reason why I want to extend that invite, we have what we call a home accessibility center that will kind of demonstrate, display a lot of these different home accessibility options. So if that's something that is, of interest to you or on your mind, I would invite you out to meet with our teams to talk about things you might be able to do in your home. And then alongside
Now,
that,
Patrick, one quick question for you is, why is the home accessibility so crucial?
home accessibility is so crucial, and thanks for that prompt, John, too. I talked a little bit about aging in place, right? So people can stay in their community, stay in their homes. We know that, that pays so many dividends, both emotionally, but also economically. If we can keep people in their homes and engaged in their communities. Also, home accessibility is crucial from a standpoint of injury prevention, right? We see so many injuries and really permanent disabilities happen around slipping and falling in the shower, or other pieces, right? As you're moving around and about your daily lives, things can happen. And so one of the things that we try to tell folks or signal to folks is, you may not have a disability at the moment, but incorporating some of these 0-step solutions as you age and as your needs change are really important for everybody. It's also finally important too for what we call visitability. So if you have friends, neighbors, family members who have disabilities, having them be able to visit and stay at your homes is super important.
It's said that only 5% of residential homes in the US
right.
are accessible to individuals with moderate mobility disabilities. And I mean, it's very true. My home is inaccessible if I ever wanted to have my coworker and friend Patrick come over.
Right. And one piece of that too, I know kind of getting into our second bullet here, is you'd be amazed at how many how many positive changes we can make with just a simple piece of equipment too. So I think too often there's sort of this misnomer or understanding that accessibility is this huge undertaking and costly undertaking. And really, I think the two things I want you to take away from this slide and in this talk today is that, you know, when we do things up front, when we plan for things in advance, it's actually not, in a lot of cases, it doesn't cost you anything more. And then also getting to that equipment piece, we have a whole equipment loan closet, you know, of walkers, wheelchairs, other different types of adaptive equipment that we can use as solutions for folks. And a lot of that is handled kind of, I talked about that no wrong door. A lot of that is handled again through that third bullet there, INR, which we refer to as information and referral, right? So those are the folks that will, you know, if you call up disability advocates on the numbers that we will provide you today, those are the folks that'll direct you to the right department. And really, you know, as we covered too, it all kind of falls under that umbrella of independent living supports, right? We also provide some additional supports in that umbrella around, you know, folks who may have never lived independently before. What kind of other supports can we give them? How can we work with their families as part of those family support services, as well as our last bullet, to really address the housing piece, you know, holistically. And then next slide here. When we talk about access to community, so, you know, as you've probably gleaned so far from the presentation, a lot of this is, you know, what we've talked about is direct work, individual work with people with disabilities. But the beauty of that is that we're able to learn a lot as we work with folks individually that we can then take out in the community and apply to public events, to something we call systems change or systems advocacy, right? So working with folks in Lansing and even DC around what are those larger scale changes that we can help with that is going to make life more livable for everybody, right? Resource connection. So, you know, one of the biggest pieces I think of our information and referral work is that we may not have the answers to everything. We like to think we have a lot of good answers when it comes to disability, but we have, you know, great partnerships with all kinds of different nonprofit and for-profit, any kind of entity really in Grand Rapids when it comes to, you know, it could be, where do I find a bed that's accessible? Where do I find, you know, some of the calls that come in, they're all over the map in terms of needing to find certain resources. So there's really no end to where we can connect folks. And then kind of the last two pieces there, one of the things that I get the pleasure to work on when we talk about community is this idea of accessibility reviews. And so I like to think about it, you know, too often I think we think about accessibility as this compliance standard, and that's great. You know, I'm very appreciative of the Americans with Disabilities Act as a landmark piece of civil rights legislation, right? But I think we have to remember that it came out of an imperfect political process, right? And so when we talk about optimal accessibility, the ADA is just kind of the bare minimum. And so we like to work with folks to say, you know, it could be a community organization, could be a business, could be a program as well. So both architecturally and programmatically, we work with folks to say, how can we optimize what we're doing? Because we find that when we address accessibility first as a foundation, we create a more innovative space and a more innovative program for everybody, especially around DEI too, because we know that oftentimes folks have multiple identities, as we'll talk about, disability being one of them. And then lastly, and John's kind of our specialist in this area, we talked about the accessibility review services that we offer organizations. So please reach out to me if you're interested in those. But then John, in terms of education and trainings, John does a phenomenal job around our DEIA presentation. So really adding that access piece to DEI learnings that companies and organizations are already doing, right? And again, it really boils down to this idea that if we address access first, it really amplifies a lot of what we're doing around DEI and the success of our DEI efforts. So that's why we love to have the A included. Next
Yeah,
slide.
we've all often felt that at a lot of DEI events and discussions, disability is left off the table. And that's one reason why we really love partnering with the Grand Rapids Chamber, is that they recognize disability as one of these key components to diversity, equity, inclusion. And we like to add that emphasis on that accessibility piece. An area that I spent the last few years working in is in our workforce development team, where we focus on that access to employment. The program that I used to be a part of was our youth transition services, which had a heavy focus on youth employment readiness. We would go to high schools, we'd do summer programs, we'd work with individual youth between the ages of 14 and 26 to help ready those individuals for employment and how to work through and past and around various barriers that they might have to employment. One of the big parts of this is a volunteer opportunity that we have for local businesses to be a part of helping mentor these young individuals, which I will mention later on in the slides. We have ADA Title I supports. Now, the Americans with Disabilities Act has 5 titles. The first title covers employment. This covers a whole spectrum of confidentiality, discrimination protections, as well as accommodations. We do offer a lot of supports when it comes to this, from helping employers better understand the legal nuances to this amendment to the Constitution, as well as blah blah blah. Sorry, it's early. As well as helping employees navigate accommodations and how to go through that interactive process in requesting accommodations. We offer employability work groups, whereas groups we instruct individuals on a peer mentality, how to prepare themselves for employment, how to handle interviews, how to represent themselves on a resume to ensure that even though they might have barriers related to their disability, that they can be a benefit to working. And then one of the biggest hurdles individuals often have when it comes to gaining employment is benefits that they might be receiving. Individuals who might be receiving SSI, which is supplemental security income, or Social Security disability insurance, also known as SSDI, can have some fear when it comes to gaining employment of losing that benefit. And we have 3 certified benefit specialists who work with them on work incentives. This is looking at what they can actually work and how to get the most out of their benefit. And for most individuals, it's not the fear of losing that financial benefit, it's that health insurance piece, that Medicaid, that Medicare, and our staff will work with them to ensure that they are covered and they're not losing those vital supports that they need to simply survive. But we've talked a bit about some of the services that we offer, but I think it's important to really delve into what is disability. And I love these images here because this is a representation of that systems change advocacy Patrick mentioned. We all know the symbol on the left side of our screen, which is what used to be the universal symbol of accessibility. And in this, you see an individual in a wheelchair who is fairly inert. You would imagine this person, in order to get around, needs to be pushed, needs assistance. To the right is what is now the new universal symbol for accessibility. All signs, when they are going to be replaced, will need to use this symbol, as the Michigan State representatives just voted this through back in August, I believe. And
Yep.
This symbol now shows somebody being active, living their life on the go, which is something we are very proud of, pushing through that change.
And then just to not to bore everybody with oh, sorry, John, I think we went back there. Not to bore everybody with the definition, and there are places where I really don't like this definition, but it's what we have in terms of the ADA. So just to ground us a little bit as a foundation in what we mean when we're talking about a disability, especially when it comes to employment, it looks at a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. That's straight from the ADA. So if many of you may be familiar with that, wanted to include that as sort of a grounding for us there. But let's go to the next slide here, John.
Yep, I would just like to add that, like, this is the ADA's definition of disability. Unfortunately, everybody has their own definition to disability when it comes to Social Security Administration, when it comes to a lot of other aspects. But this is the definition that the ADA uses, that we like to go by, and that you as our business community will most likely be fielding.
But I think what's important too, and the reason why I said, I think I mentioned, I don't necessarily like a lot of that formality in the definition. And the reason why is because disability is so broad and diverse. So one of the beauties of this slide, I think, with all of these different disabilities on the screen, and if I were cooler, I would have reinstated the timing effect so that they all kind of populate as we go. But it's a very cool, like, visual and sound effect there. But as you can see, you know, I think it's too often, again, sort of maybe a misnomer when we think about disability. You may think, oh, well, I don't have any experience with disability. Why does disability affect me? Why do these issues that Patrick and John are talking about, why do they affect me? And I think this slide really starts to get at that question, because if we look at all of these disabilities that we have here, and this is by no means a comprehensive list, you know, in terms of asthma, in terms of stroke, in terms of anxiety, depression, back injury, ADHD, all these things are fairly common experiences in society. So in terms of, you know, even if, you know, we're lucky enough to not have any of these things affect us, we probably know a friend, a neighbor, a family member, you know, for whom these things are part of their daily lives. And so I like to share that, you know, whether you might believe it or not, you are connected to the disability community. And just to kind of zoom us out a little bit here. So you may be saying, okay, yeah, that's great, Patrick, that all sounds wonderful. But really, if we look at just statistically, what does that all mean? What's the 10,000 foot view here? And that's that 61 million adults just in the US and more than 1 billion individuals globally have a disability. So that 61 million number, that represents about 1 in 4. So if I took 4 of you out of the crowd, odds are that 1 of you would experience a disability. And that number actually is showing no signs of slowing down, because we know that 10,000 baby boomers will turn 65 today, and 10,000 more will cross that threshold every day for the next 19 years. And so I think that's particularly important to share, because we know that aging, you know, we all know the impacts that that has on people experiencing disabilities. So, you know, as aging is occurring, so is the incidence of disability and its importance in our conversations.
Yep. And when it comes to disability, there's a ton of misconceptions. I mean, disability takes many different shapes and forms. And I love this image here of not all disabilities look the same. Disability is much broader than any statistic number can represent. Disability does not discriminate. It is the one cross-categorical minority group that anybody can join at any point in time. I myself was sighted up until age 12. Then one day I woke up and could no longer see. And that is a story that happens to a lot of people. The World Health Organization acknowledges that everybody will experience some form of disability in their life. whether it's something permanent or temporary. Think a broken arm. You are getting a substantial limit to some major life activities when you're navigating with a broken arm, broken leg. And when I talked about disability can take many shapes and sizes, we can have congenital disabilities, meaning from birth or acquired later in life. Me and Patrick are two examples of each one of those. You can have something that's visible or something that is invisible. Now, the important thing to know is invisible disabilities have just as much, if not more, of an impact on an individual as those visible disabilities. I could tell numerous stories, and I do in our DEIA disability perspective training, about navigating life with invisible disabilities as well as visible disabilities and how perception can impact individuals. But it is important to know that disability is never a one-size-fits-all solution. No matter if two people have the same diagnosis, disability occurs on a spectrum. Just because you've met two people who have cerebral palsy, two people who have blindness and low vision, does not mean they have the exact same levels of needs or barriers and limitations. It all happens on a spectrum. We are all very unique individuals.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I think is of particular interest to this group being the Grand Rapids Chamber, right, is this idea of disability in business. And this is a really cool, I would say, still emerging space that I get the chance to play in every day. So I'm very thankful for that. And I think it's really cool because it's a paradigm shift, right? I talked about accessibility often being seen as this compliance mechanism. And I think the problem that we run into when we just look at accessibility and disability from a compliance standpoint is we miss out on the opportunity to look at disability as an innovation and an opportunity, a platform from which to learn. One of the things that I get to see daily in my job is that we have a wonderful group of volunteers with disabilities. We call them our test pilots. And we get to oftentimes do a lot of work through our partnership with Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc., trying to make downtown Grand Rapids and the surrounding areas more accessible. And you'd be amazed if you heard some of the insights that came out of some of these folks, just, sharing how they navigate the world and how our businesses and our municipalities are able to benefit from that. So really, to kind of couch that in the context of our slide here, people with disabilities are an untapped resource, both in design, but then also in employment, right? We all are aware of the sort of employment challenges that we've faced both pre and post pandemic. And I think individuals with disabilities obviously are a very clearly untapped resource. We know that 8 in 10 individuals with disabilities are not in the labor force. And this is a problem because we know that people with disabilities and some companies are really shining stars in this. We know that those companies that have really embraced disability as a talent pool are seeing some amazing innovation and productivity gains. Because, as I talked about from an innovation perspective, John and I, as you may have gathered, we are people who are forced to innovate every day to adapt to a world that's not designed for us, right? And so a lot of those innovations can arrive in some very cool programmatic and also product solutions as well.
Now, one thing I want to mention about untapped resources real quick is that businesses often do things that they don't even realize that closes the door to individuals with disabilities wanting to seek employment there. I've had numerous conversations with individuals with disabilities on how to handle a simple question on online applications of, do you have a valid driver's license? Now, for a lot of jobs, is that a primary aspect of the job, or is the primary aspect of the job that you have access to transportation, that you are able to get from site to site? I do not have a driver's license. I know many of individuals with disabilities that do have access to transportation, but do not have a valid driver's license. So filling out a section like that on an application can make them feel like they're lying and make them avoid submitting that application. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we as the business community do that subconsciously convinces individuals with disabilities not to apply.
Right. And to build a little bit on that, and this is fortunately becoming less of an issue as we've all realized the benefits of remote work. But you all would be amazed at the number of people with disabilities whom I talk to, pre-pandemic and even now around, they were never given opportunities to work remotely. And so they could be an amazingly qualified individual, but because their employer was so centered on having them in an office space and they maybe struggled to with all of the supports that they needed, they maybe struggled to get into an office space or make a certain office space on time, et cetera, that business is now, or organization is now losing out on that individual. And so I think that was sort of and I actually wrote a piece about this for the Grand Rapids Business Journal. It's a little dated now, but that I would call that as maybe one of the silver linings, if there are any, of the pandemic, is that folks are starting to see, the power of remote work, not just for everybody, but as part of reaching that untapped talent pool of people with disabilities. One of the things too that I wanted to highlight in terms of, we mentioned it being untapped, that 8 in 10 people with disabilities are not in the labor force in terms of the labor force participation rate. We do know that when we are able to get them to participate, individuals with disabilities, organizations that are serving individuals with disabilities experience less turnover because individuals with disabilities are oftentimes very grateful to have the jobs that they have and the environments where they feel, seen and valued. And so turnover becomes less of an issue. Innovation, as we talked about, increases. One great example of this is actually the story of Walgreens. So a VP of Walgreens a number of years ago had a son with a disability. I believe he was on the autism spectrum. And this VP of Walgreens went from thinking that his son was never going to be able to hold a job to, as he started thinking about it and started really honing in on his son's strengths, they started to implement a lot of different accessibility solutions at Walgreens, and their plant productivity, their factory productivity, things of that nature all went up. And they had, obviously, as we talked about, less turnover, they had more loyalty, they and really saw kind of that entire productivity being driven by working and engaging the disability community.
Yep.
So
another great example of innovation when it comes to disability is Ingvar Kamprad, who was the founder and CEO of IKEA. Him himself had a form of dyslexia where numbers can get jumbled up when he looks at them. And that is why IKEA uses names for their products, is because that was a lot easier for him to identify instead of long product code numbers. And he found that his employees were able to find products significantly faster by saying, hey, find Svetlana, versus saying, I need you to go get 86543294653. We were able to recognize that number and locate it a lot faster. And that's just a great example of an innovation of changing something that we got used to for an accommodation that seemed to have a universal positive impact.
Right. And one of the final things before we kind of go off of this topic a little, I mean, we could all geek out on this all day, I think. But one of the final things that I wanted to point out in terms of the benefits, we talked about the employment side being Disability Employment Awareness Month, but there's also a natural consumer benefit as well. So it is estimated that individuals with disabilities number about 2 billion consumers overall globally, and that is a number 1.85 to 2 billion that is a bigger emerging market than the size of China. And that's a market that a lot of folks are missing out on when they say that we are not going to engage with people with disabilities. That market grows even larger when we think about all the parents and caregivers, neighbors and friends that are associated with individuals with disabilities. That adds another 3.4 billion associates and a total of 13 trillion in annual disposable income that this disability market is responsible for directly driving. And so I like to share that, and I know it's not all about numbers. You know, I would never want it to be all about numbers, but I like to share that as a very clear demonstration of the business case for not only hiring people with disabilities, but also thinking about your products and campaigns around people with disabilities. Because we know, I mean, again, innovation comes into play there too, with the idea that if we can make a product or a program easy for somebody with a disability to access, we've improved the user experience for everybody.
And I know as individuals with disabilities, sometimes we vote with our dollars, and there are businesses that I will not support because of public refusal for them to support and accommodate individuals with disabilities. So, I mean, by being accessible, by keeping people with disabilities in mind, you are avoiding closing the door on 2 billion potential consumers. Just to add a couple things, when employees see a company supporting individuals with disabilities in their business, that often improves morale for individuals who don't have disabilities, because not only do they build that camaraderie, they feel that if something were to happen to them, they would be supported as well. Yep, and there are some financial incentives. This is something I don't often like to mention because I feel like it's a little bit of a bribe at times, but it is something to consider, is that there are tax deductions for hiring individuals with disabilities.
And John, I think we have just a few minutes remaining here, and we want to leave some time for questions too. So let's run through quickly of how we can help folks, and then we'll hopefully leave some time for questions.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead, John.
Yep. So how we can help you, Patrick, do you want to talk quickly about the accessibility reviews and consulting?
Yeah, certainly we'll do that. And I can do this very quickly because we've kind of already mentioned it in terms of some of that external outreach that we do. We are available to review spaces, both existing spaces and new projects, right? To help you really take advantage and capitalize on, you know, how can we make a space more accessible to reach that consumer group, to reach that group of potential employees, that talent pool. So certainly feel free to reach out to me when it comes to accessibility reviews and consulting.
Yep. So when it comes to staff trainings and presentations, I offer a slew of presentations and trainings to our business community and fellow organizations. These delve into diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility issues, looking at things like ableism, looking at things like accessibility, universal design, proper language to use around individuals with disabilities, as well as etiquette for better interactions working with people, how to accommodate and how to ensure that you are creating a welcoming space. We do have a video that I'd love to share, but I didn't want to be cognizant of our time, so we might throw that link in the chat. so you guys can watch it, talking about some of those trainings, but that is something that we do offer and we are excited to share with you guys. We do a lot to build community awareness. We have large events that we put on throughout the year with our ADA celebration, our Disability Awareness Day, and many others, where we'd love to have business leaders that shine in accessibility be featured there. We also do a podcast called Flattening the Curve, where we interview a lot of local businesses that do great work when it comes to accessibility. I know recently I interviewed the city of Wyoming's Parks and Rec. I interviewed Grand Rapids, Gerald R. Ford International Airport, and the local Broadway group. Yep. We offer individual supports. This could be for you, your family, your employees. We offer a ton of individualized supports, and we have volunteer opportunities. And this volunteer opportunities can be a way of us helping you and you helping us. And one of those big ones is our mock interview events. With our youth, we put on classes where we bring them together, we teach them those employment skills, but what we like to do is we like to bring in those business members in our community to come in and conduct those interviews. Not only does this give you an opportunity to give back to those youth, it gives them an opportunity to build a connection to the community at a large. And this has been a huge success. There are numerous businesses that have partnered with us and really helped impact these youth in the community. Patrick, you want to hit those last two?
Sure. Let's see. I think you already hit mock interviews. Why don't you go to the we talked about sponsorships, didn't we, as well? Maybe go to the next slide there, John.
No, that's pretty much it, Patrick. If you want to mention the sponsorships.
Oh yeah. So obviously, as you guys can, being a nonprofit, we have, and this happens to be gala season. A lot of nonprofits, I'm sure you all are invited to different events. We have our own share of events as well. In fact, I coordinate one every year, our Absolutely Accessible Kent event around inclusive design with architects, municipal folks. Really, if you're interested in inclusive design, it's the place to be for anyone and everyone. And so, as I said, kind of in general, we offer a whole host of different events. Keep an eye on our events throughout the year. We have sponsorship opportunities to partner with us on those events if you're interested.
Yeah. So for a quick recap, today we talked about agencies like Centers for Independent Living that are here to help. They offer a wide array of supports in the community. Services are geared to involving and supporting individuals with disabilities. We have a heavy focus on accessibility and universal design. We have events that can share awareness and create volunteer opportunities. We try to be a community leader in diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions related to disability as a whole. And now I do know we have some time for questions. And I did see one in the chat that I will get to real quick. And yes, when it comes to our presentations and our trainings, we can offer those as lunch and learns. I know I have a few of those booked up throughout this week.
Yeah, so John, I'll just repeat the question because not everyone on the webinar can see the question. So the question was that within your staff trainings and presentations, do you offer lunch and learn opportunities where we could record and share company-wide? And John, what's the answer? Can you just repeat the answer to that again?
Yep, so we do offer lunch and learn opportunities with recordings. For a small fee, we do allow individuals to record and share within their own organization for a time period. I do have some strict rules on recorded presentations and sharing externally outside of your organization.
So they can reach out to you using the information on the screen to follow up with that. So another question came in. If we're interested in participating, helping to support the mock interviews, how do we go about signing up? Maybe Patrick, Is that yours or Jonathan's?
That is in our workforce development team that I work closely with. So you can contact me and I can get you into contact with Nick and Ella who run those programs.
All right. I'm not sure we have time for you to answer my big question that I was going to ask you, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway. Maybe you can hit it in 30 seconds. This is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Why is that an important thing for us to pay attention to this month?
So disability is often swept under the rug. We as a society, we tend to ignore it more than acknowledge it. And again, when we talk about 1 in 4 individuals have a disability, when we talk about everybody experiencing some form of disability in their life, whether it be permanent or temporary, we want people to be aware that disability is a normal part of human diversity. It is nothing to be ashamed of. It is nothing to hide. It is something to be proud of. It is something to acknowledge, something to honor. And really, we just want to put those eyes on this as a key part of human diversity. And
to build off that, I hope I get 30 seconds as well, just to say that I talked a little bit about a paradigm shift, right? So moving beyond this idea of accessibility and disability as just something we address in the space of compliance, something we have to do legally because there are these people in wheelchairs and there are these people with white canes that will demand that we do this. I like to move beyond that and to say that this is an opportunity for innovation, right? So working alongside people with disabilities, sometimes we find, some of the greatest innovations that we've seen in products. We've seen, places like Tommy Hilfiger are doing a lot of work around adaptive clothing design to make clothing easier. Nike has a shoe that allows you to easily insert your foot that works for people with disabilities, but works for everybody, right? So I think my big passion area and why I'm happy to be in the role that I'm in as an MBA is that disability doesn't just make sense from a compliance standpoint, but it makes business sense. So if you are not engaging with people with disabilities, you're really missing out, not just on, from a legal standpoint, obviously, but from an innovation standpoint as well. And I don't know that I kept 30 seconds, but I tried my best.
Thanks, Patrick. I appreciate that. And thank you to everyone who was able to join us today on our diversity and talent webinar series. You will receive a follow-up email with some resources and information related to the presentations that were given today, and we'll include the link to that video as well as some resources for how your business might focus on supporting employees or reaching out and expanding your talent pool around and engaging and employing people with disabilities. We'll provide those resources for you in a follow-up email. Again, I want to thank our sponsors for today's event, particularly our premier sponsor, Spartan Nash, and our event underwriters, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Blue Care Network, and Corewell Health. And I want to thank all of you who were able to participate with us today, and thank you to our 2 awesome presenters, Jonathan and Patrick. We appreciate it so much. And you know how much I personally appreciate what you bring to the table in your work. So I will thank you all for coming, participating today, and we'll see you in 2023.